You are listening to Unplugged Sessions, which is a temporary platform that inspires creative industry professionals such as producers, programmers, and curious minds that have the arts and culture at heart. My name is Christopher Buttigieg, and I'm a producer for creatives and a manager in the creative industry. I am speaking with arts and cultural industry professionals to talk about their experiences, the lessons they've learned, and how to make an impact. Welcome. Well, basically, I'm very much thrilled today to have Judith Walsh as our first participant and also the first speaker of Unplugged Sessions. Well, I've met Judith a few years ago on a classical music festival called the Lemon Festival. And also, Judith recently switched from working as a freelance project manager. She used to work across different art forms to working as a general manager at Starcatchers. Judith, hello, how are you?
Hi, I'm fine. Thanks, Chris. Thank you for having a chat today. It's just exciting to wash and blow dry my hair and put on a sparkly top. So this is lovely.
Why don't you start by giving us a brief introduction about you and also about what your career involves?
So I have worked in arts management since I left music college about 15 years ago. So I studied saxophone and I did a performance degree at Royal Northern College of Music. And throughout that time, I knew I wanted to gig, I knew I wanted to teach, but I also love putting on events. So that creativity that comes in producing was sort of right there from the beginning for me and wrapped up in my identity as a performer. So I came out of music college with what's known as a portfolio career. Now it's got a term. At that point, it was just doing bits and bobs. So I was gigging in pubs and clubs as a sax player, was teaching some private instrumental music lessons, and I also got a full-time job as general administrator at Manchester Camerata. Okay. So they were great. That orchestra really gave me my break into arts management. Mm-hmm. And from that point, I was hooked, and I realised that not everyone's organised. That was really my main takeaway was, oh, this is a good thing, that I don't think too much about the fact I'm generally quite positive, enthusiastic, organised person. And here's a job I can do that uses those sort of natural attributes. So it was a great fact-finding mission working for the orchestra. I learned so much of the bread and butter of what it means to run an orchestra and work with professional artists. Yeah. And since then, that's where my career's taken me. So I then moved to Glasgow and worked with Scottish Ensemble for about 5 years. And that was just a brilliant experience in my life. Sort of the foundations and the bedrock of who I am in my career. So touring all across lots of different types of venues, but with really beautiful, beautiful music. Mm-hmm. And it was at the end of that period with the orchestra where I decided to brave it and go freelance. And it was a really big step at the time, but it turned out to just be beautiful. So the 10 years that I had as a freelancer thereafter, used all of that bedrock of skills, all those foundational skills that I'd learned in the orchestra. Amazing people I'd been able to witness and kind of steal all their ideas of how they do things really well in a really safe, held environment in a team, to then go solo, if you like. And what I really wanted to achieve by going freelance was to to diversify what I could do. So up until that point, it'd been orchestral management. But being freelance, I then very quickly got into chamber music. So I was general manager at Mr. McFall's Chamber for a long time. That was a wonderful experience in terms of new music and commissioning and cross art form working. And also out with music. So working with All or Nothing Aerial Dance Theatre Company and working with individual artists on digital, literature, all genres of music, dance. I'm sure I've missed someone out in the mix there. And usually creating new work for audiences, and really looking at audiences and saying, what are people wanting? What do they need? Where are they? How do they like to enjoy their their live performance. And as you say, Chris, we met at Lammermuir Festival, which was such a high point in my freelance working, getting to work with that team, and getting a taste of what it means to run a festival. So it's from the other end. So working with performers and being at the artist end and delivering the work, and then working with the promoters and being the receiving house and from that end. My top tips are, it's just be nice, be kind, be interested in others.
Exactly.
And actually you can have brilliant skills, but if you don't have those things, you don't get so far in the arts sector, because it's such a personal connection that's required to take these risks and people to put their work out there. So
I totally agree with you on that. And we'll speak about skills later on, actually. One of the questions that I have for you is, so you shifted from the classical music focused work to working on projects targeted to toddlers and parents. How does that feel now? Because you changed completely. So you just mentioned that you've done some theater work before, but Starcatchers is something completely different.
Yes. So exactly a year ago, I was fortunate enough to be offered the general manager job, which is a full-time employed role at Starcatchers. And Starcatchers is Scotland's national arts and early years organisation. And for me, I'd come to the end of this 10-year period of running my own business, if you like, in arts management and pulling together remote teams to work together on projects. And what I could really see was happening with my career was I was very good at doing what I did, but it wasn't necessarily developing me because the size of the project, size of the budget, size of the teams were generally manageable by freelance, ad hoc, project-based teams. And inevitably, if you're going to go to something bigger, you're going to want to start employing people. So I made that move to employment, and Starcatchers was just a perfect fit for me. Because the role was that real sense of linking the strategic vision with the logistics and managing the team. So the role worked well for me. And as for the company, what I'd realised over my career to date was, while the onstage quality and performance and the artists are hugely important, and I get so much buzz out of working with them, my rationale for choosing projects to work on had shifted. And I was wanting to work on projects that clearly delivered for the audience, with the audience at heart. And that's the way I'd begun to describe what I can offer people. I'd say, well, book me to come and deliver your project because I will put the audience at the heart of how I think about things. So Starcatchers for me was a perfect fit, because what we do at Starcatchers is we look at children aged 0 to 5 in Scotland, and we think about their right, enshrined in Scots law now, in the UNCRC, the UN's Convention on the Rights of the Child, to have access to culture. And also looking at the bigger picture in terms of, why do we forget about children under 5 a lot of the time in the arts world? We just lump them in as a babes in arms policy. Or we maybe say this is children's theatre, but we're not really interrogating, or children's music, or children's whatever it is, but we're not interrogating the age and stage and how these children will respond. So I'm fascinated by what we can learn from our youngest audiences and how that then relates to how adults maybe consume their culture. Because I think there's probably a lot we can learn from babies.
Well, and they're also the future audience here. So it's very much important to, I think, nourish that love and passion for the arts, for them to actually understand how to actually participate and engage in the arts. You might tell me more about this. There are probably parents who have never engaged with the arts before, and they do it for the first time with their toddlers, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And audiences don't just turn up age 5 when they can talk or when they go to school. We're all citizens. We all experience the world around us. And to me, the arts is just amplifying the world around us and the people in this world and our thoughts and our feelings. So you're absolutely right that for some adults who maybe experienced certain types of art forms or live performance for the first time when they have their children, it then is a really special thing, because actually the way research shows us that very young children gain a lot from these experiences is because they share them with their adult. So you're not just performing for the child, it's to do with the child sharing it with their adult who's important to them. So yeah, it's
Great. Okay, we have another question here. So basically, are there any skills and ways of working that you build specifically working as a freelancer that you feel that you can transfer to a longer term role? What can non-freelance workers learn from the patterns of freelance project work?
So this is a super question because I went from employment and took all those structures and processes in terms of purchase day books and, you know, how you log activity, took it into my freelance working. And when I was freelance working, every time a new project came in or I had to manage my portfolio of projects, fundraising, you know, reports due, I'd sort of borrowed from the employed world. But through the course of those 10 years, and certainly when it came to team working, so I got so quite busy with the projects that I would pull in other freelancers and we would work together. And we, together with Ruth Davey and Jenny Searle, we created something called the Creative Consortium, which was like our little hub where we could manage projects together across us all. And we need to have really sophisticated ways of communicating, divvying out tasks and making sure we delivered on budget. So actually a lot of that working is stuff that I've now been able to bring back into employed life. Because what I've noticed coming back into an office environment, when people know I'm going to be there Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, there's less of an immediate urgency to plan your week because you're just there. You're like, well, I'll do whatever needs to be done. And I know that there are these things to be done. But then there's things that will come in that I'm not anticipating. So the interesting thing right now that we're home working is actually work plans are more important than ever, I think, for employed teams. So actually cataloguing on a week-by-week basis in some sort of spreadsheet or app, Trello, planners, whatever they are, who's doing what are the key jobs that need to be done this week, what are the key deadlines, and sort of separating that out from what are individual team members' to-do lists. Because I personally don't want to internalize everybody's to-do lists, and neither do we really need them collated in our office. But what we do need to do is understand how we're all working because we're not in the same place right now. So I really believe that sort of freelance time management. I always believe you get more out of a freelancer than you think because they're so efficient because they have to be.
And let's face it, it's another skill that you have to have. It's not just managing projects, but first of all, you have to know how to manage yourself. So that's a very important skill to have. And I'm sure you found it useful when you got your full-time job. Perfect. So you just mentioned this a little bit. How do you manage your work? So you mentioned spreadsheets, which let's say Judith's spreadsheets are amazing.
Thank you for saying that's the next thing you can say to me.
They are really good, Judith. I had the chance to follow some of your spreadsheets, so yes. Yes, how do you manage your work?
Okay, so my work or the company's workload, or both? Me as an individual?
No, let's say both of them. Let's start with you as an individual.
Right, okay, so I tend to chunk things up into time. Particularly now I'm not working in a project. I think when you're working in a project, it's great. You have a beginning, a middle, and an end. So it's really gifted to the timescales that you're looking at. Now that I work in a year-round organisation, that was the first thing I noticed was, right, we need some beginnings, middles, and ends, even though this is ongoing. So because I do the finance and fundraising, I tend to think in quarters, so financial quarters. So that really helps me. And as a team, we map out things, our big strategic priorities, generally by quarter or by financial year, and then have the bigger strategic plans that I'm sure a lot of people listening will have in their companies to guide you over sort of 3 to 5 years. But then when we drill down into it, and we do this as a team, this isn't something that's imposed. You know, we work together collaboratively to figure project out. So we look at the quarters and the big sort of outcomes for every quarter. And that lets me assess how busy we might be. Because if all the projects are culminating in the autumn, I need to know that in advance for staffing. And other people need to know it for intricacies of holidays, what they want to do. And then within that, as a team, we'll have a monthly spreadsheet. And that it usually is on a big wall planner in the office, but we can't do that with Sharpies.
Yeah.
So at the minute, it's actually online in a spreadsheet. So that's like a monthly view. So we can see, again, you can see it a month, what's happening across the company, particularly if you've got lots of different things that you're juggling.
And of course, because you have the strategy of Starcatchers, and you have to follow that.
Yeah.
But then each and every department has their own goals. So that's why it's very much important to keep that communication together.
Yeah, and it's really easy to fall into a silo and say, well, I only work on this strand of the work, so I'm not going to listen to the other stuff because I don't really need to. But actually, we're at that interesting point in the size of our company where it is still possible to have really good interconnectivity. And we're seeing the benefits of that now, that things are feeding off each other and linking together. And then when it comes to actually figuring out what to do every day and being really efficient, and efficiency is like king for me, I still use pen and paper, don't judge me, I recycle it. But this pad of paper isn't just a kind of empty sheet. It's chunked out into Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Because I find an A4 pad is just like, I could write 100 things that I should be doing on an empty A4 pad. And I've seen colleagues do it where they show me their to-do list and I just want to, give them a hug because it's so long. So I think by allocating things to a specific day, you therefore don't clog up one day with too many things. You can then have the joy of ticking it off when you've done it. And then if it needs to move, because you have a phone call come in or a last minute unexpected thing you have to deal with, at least then you're just moving one item from one day to another day. And to me, that really simple thing of allocating a day, and probably everyone who's listening to this says, yeah, we do that already.
Yeah.
But it's a really easy pitfall to have one big long to-do list with no time allocated to it.
I must say, there are loads of digital platforms nowadays that you can use as a to-do list or as a plan, but I think pen and paper will still remain my favorites. I think definitely.
Do you do it?
I do love my sticky notes. At some point I had done a full year one, which gives me an idea of when I have certain festivals and because I can plan my year.
Well, I was thinking from a health and well-being perspective. Burnout and fatigue in the arts it was our pandemic before there was a real, clinical medical pandemic. And it's been a live discussion for years that I've been involved with and trying to unpick how we can be healthier. And I think that is one of the keys is about ring fencing personal time and not just working because you can.
And I honestly had started my full year one just because of that, because I could understand when I at least have a week or 2 weeks where I can actually say, this is going to be my break and I don't have to think about that project. So at least I give time for myself to have a short break up until I start focusing really on something else. So that's why I think a full year one really works.
And actually that ties back to what you said about things that work for freelance, that work in employed roles, is that I got really good as a freelancer of saying to people who were asking me to do work for them, yes, I'd love to. I can do it next Tuesday.
Yeah.
Whereas now in an employed role, it's very easy to say, okay, and then you realize you don't have time and you get stressed. But actually, it's really helpful to say, look at your thing and say, I will do that. Is tomorrow okay? And it sets up these really good expectations with your colleagues.
This is my question, actually, Judith. I'm very much interested in the community work that you have done previously. And I'm interested actually to know how you're integrating community work in your role at Starcatchers. Can you speak about that?
Yes, so to me, I've always blurred the boundaries of what is and isn't community work versus what is and isn't live performance. It's never really made sense to me in the way that I like to produce work or think about my audience. So, for example, at Live Music Now, which was a place I worked for about 7 years in total, we were working with some of the best professional young musicians, and they were performing for audiences who don't usually have access to concert halls or concerts or festivals. So I guess you could call that community work, but as far as I was concerned, it was just great music for people. And I find those tags a little bit problematic. They're sort of business speak, management speak, calling things outreach or community work or whatever it is. And if you look at the purpose of Starcatchers, at the heart of Starcatchers is about the child. So anything we do, whether it's training for early years practitioners, whether it's live theatre productions, whether it's arts installations or community-based working, it will always be because that is serving the needs of the child.
Of course.
So I agree with you that this term of community working exists in our sector, and there's a lot to be said for being able to articulate what that means in terms of grassroots, participatory working that really responds to the needs of the people you're with. And maybe it's more longitudinal for social impact, and all of that's really important. But I think for me, it's definitely, with the arts side, it's a blurring, and the arts for social purpose is huge for me, and really drove the idea behind setting up Nevis Ensemble a number of years ago as Scotland's street orchestra, which Jamie Munn and I thought would be a great way of taking orchestral music to everyone and anyone. So it's music for everyone, everywhere.
Let's face it, the beauty of art is the sense of community, that arts gets everyone together. So, and it makes sense, all right? Like, we create art, we organize events, but in the end, it's for the community. And that's the beauty of it.
Yeah.
Totally agree. Okay. What are some of the challenges that you face as a manager at Starcatchers? So it's either funding, it's either audience engagement. Just in brief. I know that the role of a general manager in an organization, in any organization, would face loads of challenges. But what are some of the main challenges?
So this is a really hard question for me to answer, because my natural headspace is I'm a realist, but I'm positive. So to me, a challenge, it doesn't really, I struggle to answer that, because the reality is this is what we're dealing with. I will go out and make it happen. And I'm very positive about it. So I don't tend to be negative and look at things as being obstructive or difficult. But I'm very happy to say that I can think of one thing that as a general manager probably is the tricky part, is that quite often you're the only person interested in the thing you're interested in, if that makes sense. So quite often the dry nuts and bolts of running the company sit with the general manager, and very reasonably the artists, the directors even, the staff who are working on projects may or may not want to come on board and chat with me about finance even, or IT, or, health and safety, policies, so that's probably the end that you feel maybe slightly isolated, potentially, unless you're in a bigger place with more people to chat with who share your love of payroll, that's probably it.
The parent role in an organization or a company, right?
I am also the office mum, yeah.
We are all aware of the devastating effects of the COVID-19 crisis on the arts in the short, medium term. Do you believe that the crisis will affect your business in the long term? And if so, may you share some of the ways you can plan on mitigating these impacts?
I think it's really stark that right now, the theatre world, the arts world, creative and entertainment and tourism worlds in general are going to be the last to return to
to the
whatever
normal.
it is we're going to go to, I don't even mean return, to move forward. There will, other industries have to go first.
Yeah, definitely.
Education, childcare is a big one, health, criminal justice system. There's so many frontline basic provisions to run a country that I think we are all in agreement in the arts. We're not sort of suggesting that that shouldn't happen. So it's a waiting game, and there will be casualties. There's no two ways about it. There will be some organisations, big and small, who can't wait. The finances won't allow for that hiatus. Starcatchers, we're doing our best to prop ourselves up to allow that to happen. We're in a very fortunate position in that we are not reliant on box office income. So I can share that. That will be no surprise. Although we do tour, it tends to be for fees and all the rest of it. But our hearts and thoughts are really with those who've had to shut their doors. Their physical doors have had to shut. The footfall, tickets, all of that income stream, those are the ones who are really feeling it right now in this moment. I think for the industry more widely, it'll be the longer term picture. So it might be the tail end of this financial year, it might be next year, and just looking then at what happens in terms of funding streams. We've already seen a lot of trusts and foundations, quite rightly, are looking at what work they want to support going forwards. A lot of emergency relief support, health, social support. So I think as a sector, what we could all really be doing now is just trying to look after ourselves individually, being kind to each other. We're not in competition with anyone, and really tying together. And there are the sector development bodies who are doing great work right now. So I suppose my advice would be, if you're not feeling connected, the doors are open. So the Federation of Scottish Theatre, Association of British Orchestras, all the other sector development network bodies that are out there are there to represent you. You can find which one feels the best fit for you. And even if you're not a member of them, I think you'll find right now that there's this real pressing sense, probably in all of these organisations, to be consulting and pulling people in. So they do great work. They're really smart people working.
They do, and they give hope to the people who work in the arts. And as you said, they're passing through a really rough patch at the moment, unfortunately. What would you tell people who aspire to work as a manager in the creative sector?
I mean, this isn't something people do like in other in a business where you do it for the pay. I mean, it's not to say we're not well paid. It's just, there are people who work because it pays the bills, and there's a career progression, and, in different industries. So I think to be a manager in the arts is absolutely about believing what you say. Have that true value if you know why you're doing what you're doing, because it's not worth it otherwise, because it's hard work, and you have to really blur sometimes who you are and your personal life with work. So that's a positive in and of itself, because you can be true to yourself at work and at home, and it's the same you, hopefully. But I think that's a huge thing about being a manager, particularly, is that it's exciting. I mean, I've never worked a day in my life because I love what I do, and it's a cheesy saying, but it's true.
Last question. Describe arts and culture in 3 words.
Okay. Connection over contact. I have had this written in my book since September, when I went to some, was it a conference? I don't know. I went to a thing that lasted a couple of days and had some amazing speakers and time to process and reflect. And at that point, globally, there was just, everything was contact. We were all just trying to keep in touch all the time, and contact in loads of different ways and across lots of different forums and countries, and that expectation that we all need to be in touch with everybody and be doing everything. But from world leaders down, seeing that doesn't work unless you're making true connections. So what I took away from that was like a personal challenge to have true connection with my nearest and dearest, rather than just cursory contact. But also with arts and culture, seeing that role for arts and culture to be about true connections.
Yeah.
So we're not just churning stuff out for the sake of churning stuff out. It's not good enough.
No.
And right now in pandemic, we're not able to, so I think it's a challenge more so than a description of how it is currently, but it's a challenge going forwards to make sure that the art that we produce and what we're trying to encourage, at the end of the day, we want people to sit and give us their time and sometimes their money to enjoy it. So if it doesn't make a true connection, that's probably a failing. So that's my mantra for the next little while.
Amazing. Thank you. Is there anything else that you would like to speak about or you would like to add?
Well, I asked my kids, and my 8-year-old, being a philosopher in the family, said, you need to tell them to watch Kid President, the YouTuber.
All
so
right.
That's a little plug for Kid President. And when he was 10 years old, he made this brilliant video. I think that was 6 years ago now, because he's only 16. And one of the tips was, follow your dreams, but not if they're stupid. So I would like to chuck that in there.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Thanks, Judith. On that note, that's the last thing. Thank you so much for your time. And speak very soon.
Yeah, lovely to see you, Chris.
Thank you. And that was our first session of Unplugged Sessions. If you really enjoyed the chat and you wish to listen to the full conversation, all you have to do is follow the link below. Over there, you can also find more information about upcoming participants, where you can also ask them the industry-related questions prior to our chat.